In Mark 12, Jesus teaches in the temple and continues to confront the religious leaders through parables and pointed questions. The chapter features the parable of the tenants, debates on taxes, resurrection, and the greatest commandment, and ends with Jesus praising a poor widow's offering. Jesus reveals his wisdom, authority, and deep understanding of God's heart. In verses 1 through 12, Jesus tells a parable about a man who plants a vineyard and rents it to tenants. When he sends servants to collect fruit, they beat or kill them. Finally, he sends his beloved son, whom the tenants also kill, thinking they will gain the inheritance. The owner will destroy those tenants and give the vineyard to others. Jesus quotes Psalm chapter 118 verse 22, saying, "The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone." The religious leaders realize the parable is about them and want to arrest Jesus, but fear the crowd. This parable is also in Matthew chapter 21. The key message is that God's prophets and son were rejected, but Jesus is the true cornerstone of God's kingdom. In verses 13 through 17, the Pharisees and Herodians try to trap Jesus. Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar? Jesus asks for a coin and says, "Give back to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is God's." The Pharisees and Herodians are amazed by his wisdom. This parable is also in Matthew chapter 22. The key message is that followers of Jesus live responsibly in both the earthly and heavenly realms. In verses 18 through 27, the Sadducees, who deny resurrection, pose a question about a woman married to 7 brothers. Whose wife will she be in the resurrection? Jesus corrects them, saying, "You do not know the scriptures or the power of God. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living." This parable is also in Matthew chapter 22. The key message is that God's power and life extend beyond death. Resurrection is real. In verses 28 through 34, a teacher of the law asks, "What is the most important commandment?" Jesus answers, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself." The teacher agrees, and Jesus tells him, "You are not far from the kingdom of God." This parable is also in Matthew chapter 22. The key message is that the heart of God's law is love toward God and others. In verses 35 through 37, Jesus teaches in the temple, "How can the Messiah be the son of David if David calls him Lord?" This highlights that the Messiah is more than just David's descendant, he is divine. This parable is also in Matthew chapter 22. The key message is that Jesus is not only David's heir, but also David's Lord, pointing to his divine nature. In verses 38 through 40, Jesus warns the crowd, "Beware of the teachers of the law. They seek honor and recognition, but exploit widows and make long, showy prayers." Jesus says they will be severely judged. The key message is that God values humility and integrity over religious appearance. In verses 41 through 44, Jesus observes people giving money at the temple. Many rich people give large amounts, but a poor widow gives 2 small coins, all she had. Jesus says, "She gave more than all the others. Out of her poverty, she put in everything." The key message is that God values sacrificial giving and the heart behind the gift, not the amount. There are 5 key themes in Mark chapter 12. 1. Rejection and authority. Jesus predicts his own rejection by Israel's leaders. 2. Wisdom in confrontation. Jesus answers traps with clarity and truth. 3. Love fulfills the law. Loving God and others is central to true faith. 4. Jesus' divine identity. The Messiah is Lord, not just a political figure. 5. True devotion. God honors humble, sacrificial hearts, not outward show. In Mark 12, Jesus teaches through parables and direct encounters, revealing God's expectations and exposing empty religion. He tells the parable of the tenants, showing Israel's leaders' rejection of God's messengers and ultimately his son. Religious groups try to trap Jesus with questions about paying taxes, resurrection, and the law. But Jesus answers with wisdom, affirming loyalty to God, the reality of resurrection, and that the greatest commandment is to love God fully and love others as oneself. He warns against religious leaders who seek honor but lack humility, and he highlights true devotion through the example of the poor widow, whose small offering reveals genuine faith and wholehearted trust in God. In Mark chapter 12, Jesus challenges us to ask ourselves questions regarding love and what we give to God. Are you practicing real love for God and others in your daily life? Do you give God what belongs to Him, your time, talents, treasure, heart, and devotion?